Bruce Lee became a legend that transcends time. His feats continue to impress to this day, and many of his moments still defy logic. How could a man with a relatively small physique generate such an impact with a simple punch? How was his speed so absurd that movie cameras had to be adjusted to capture it? His legacy is not just a story of discipline, but a true enigma for those trying to understand his limits. Between unbelievable demonstrations of strength and reflexes that seemed superhuman, Bruce Lee left behind a series of moments that defy explanation. But to what extent can science justify these abilities? How did he achieve such unprecedented feats? Hello, restless minds. I'm Code, and this is Discover It, where curiosity has no limits. Subscribe and help the channel grow, because every time you like, comment, or share, you're helping us bring these discoveries to more people. Together, we can create a community where curiosity can change the world. And now, without further ado, let's get to the video. Bruce Lee repeatedly demonstrated his ability to generate explosive force in minimal space. His famous one-inch punch, seemingly impossible, left experts baffled. With an almost imperceptible movement, he could send an opponent flying backward, as if struck by a much more powerful blow. Science attempts to explain the phenomenon through biomechanics and efficient use of body energy, but the speed and precision of the punch still seem to transcend what is considered normal. Imagine getting punched by someone who doesn't even seem to be moving and flying backward as if you'd been hit by an invisible truck. Yeah, Bruce Lee's one-inch punch is practically a glitch in physics. To execute this technique, Bruce Lee used a perfectly coordinated chain of movements. His feet planted firmly on the ground, his hips rotated at the exact moment, and his shoulder propelled his arm with a fluidity that maximized the impact's power. The question is, how could someone generate so much energy in such a short space? While fighters train for years to achieve even half of this efficiency, Lee seemed to have refined this skill to an unattainable level. The impact of the punch was comparable to a low-speed car collision, sending the opponent flying backward with no time to react. Even with modern studies on physics and energy transfer, the precision and intensity of Bruce Lee's punch remain a mystery. He not only developed the technique, but perfected it to a point where it seemed to defy conventional laws of human movement. Among the countless demonstrations of skill, one of the most impressive involves an unlikely game, table tennis. Instead of using a paddle, he wielded a pair of nunchaku, hitting the ball with surgical precision. The speed at which the weapon moved and his absolute control over each strike made it look choreographed, but those who witnessed it swear it was real. What makes this feat so unbelievable? Using nunchaku requires an extreme level of motor coordination and reflexes. Every spin must be calculated in fractions of a second for the impact to occur at the exact angle. Yet, he not only kept the ball in play, but also executed offensive moves, putting his opponent at a disadvantage. His mastery of the weapon was so natural that it seemed like an extension of his own body. Even great martial arts masters struggle to achieve such dexterity because the margin for error is minimal. The fact that he could do something so precise and fast with such a complex weapon makes this moment a true enigma. Was it just intense practice, or was there something more about how his mind and body operated? Among the most incredible demonstrations of precision, one stands out for pushing the limits of fine motor control. The ability to light matches using nunchaku. In a move that seems straight out of a movie, he could strike the tiny matchstick at the exact angle and force needed to generate enough friction to ignite it. But how could someone have such an absurd level of control over an object moving at high speed? For this technique to work, the trajectory and force of the strike needed to be calculated with millimeter precision. Any mistake, no matter how small, would result in an impact too weak, or conversely, would break the match before it had a chance to ignite. The speed of the movement was so great that observing it with the naked eye made it impossible to perceive the details. The reaction time between identifying the match's position and delivering the strike was instantaneous, something few could replicate. Even after years of practice, Most martial artists struggle to master the basics of nunchaku, let alone handle them with such precision. This feat not only highlighted his technical mastery, but also raised questions about the limits of human coordination. Was there a secret behind this ability, or did he simply operate at a level no one had ever reached? During the filming of his fight scenes, an unusual problem arose. His speed was so extreme that the cameras of the time couldn't capture his movements correctly. In some takes, his strikes appeared as blurs or even disappeared from the image, making it impossible for the audience to follow every detail. How could someone move so fast that they tricked technology itself? To solve this issue, the directors had to ask him to slow down his strikes during filming. Even when slowing down, his actions were still incredibly fast, maintaining an impressive level of fluidity. This fact sparked speculation about the real capacity of his reflexes and the speed he reached in real combat. If modern cameras now capture movements at thousands of frames per second and still struggle to record extremely fast actions, how was he able to be that fast decades ago? Many fighters train for years to achieve a fraction of that speed, but his body seemed programmed to react instantly. Was it purely biomechanics, extreme training, or something else? The fact remains that his speed is still considered a phenomenon, and few have come close to what he demonstrated naturally. Finger strength has always been one of the most impressive aspects of his physical ability. To prove this control, he performed push-ups using only 2 fingers of one hand, supporting his body weight with unbelievable ease. Simply attempting such a feat would be enough to cause injuries to an average person, but for him, it seemed natural. How could someone develop such control and endurance in structures as small as the fingers? Here I am struggling to do a regular push-up, and Bruce Lee makes it look like 2 fingers are more than enough. The man was basically a Jedi. This feat required not only brute strength, but also absolute balance and a meticulously calculated weight distribution. The bones and tendons of the hand were not designed to bear such a load, making this demonstration even more absurd. Most martial artists strive to achieve the ability to break boards or bricks with a well-directed strike, but supporting one's entire body weight on just 2 fingers surpasses any conventional limit. What made this ability even more astonishing was how effortlessly he executed it. If the simple grip of his hand was already described as surprisingly strong, imagine the pressure exerted on just 2 fingers. Training, genetics, or an extraordinary level of body control? The mystery remains. It is said that a true master does not depend on vision to anticipate an opponent's movements. To prove this theory, he engaged in blindfolded fights, relying only on his hearing, spatial perception, and sensitivity to movement. Even without seeing, he could block attacks, dodge strikes, and respond with pinpoint accuracy. How could someone develop such an acute combat sense to the point of eliminating one of the most essential senses? The key to this feat lay in how he trained his reflexes. The slightest movements, such as air displacement or changes in an opponent's foot position, were instantly perceived. His body would respond before a strike was even completed, anticipating actions before they became a real threat. Many fighters spend their entire lives trying to develop this kind of perception, but few reach such a refined level. Even in real combat, this ability made him an unpredictable opponent. If he fought this way only as a demonstration, what could he do in a situation where his life was on the line? His ability to react to stimuli without relying on vision challenges human limitations and remains one of the most impressive aspects of his technique. Coordination and reflexes were always defining traits of his training. To refine these attributes, he practiced an exercise that seemed impossible, catching airborne rice grains using only chopsticks. The challenge required a combination of speed, precision, and an almost instantaneous reaction time. How was it possible to reach such an absurd level of dexterity? This type of training strengthened not only the hand muscles, but also the connection between the brain and body. The rice would fall rapidly, and the only way to catch it in the air was to calculate its trajectory within fractions of a second and act at the exact moment. This meant that every movement had to be perfect, with no hesitation or margin for error. While some people struggle just to use chopsticks properly when eating, he used them as tools for physical and mental enhancement. If his precision was so incredible in this small exercise, imagine what he could do in a fight where every millisecond counted. This type of training demonstrated that his mastery of the body extended far beyond brute strength. Even a seemingly light strike could become devastating in his hands. During a training session, a simple slap was enough to dislocate a sparring partner's shoulder, something that surprised even those who already knew his strength. How could such a small movement cause such a significant impact? The explanation may lie in how he used his body to generate power. Unlike a regular slap, his strike did not rely solely on arm strength, but instead on a perfectly linked sequence of movements, where each muscle worked together to amplify the transferred energy. This same technique was applied to his punches and kicks, making them far deadlier than they appeared. The incident serves as a reminder that his strength was not just in his muscles, but in how he mastered body mechanics. If a simple slap could dislocate a shoulder, how destructive could his strikes be when delivered with full intent? One of his most iconic images shows him seemingly floating against a wall without any visible hand support. Over the years, this photo has sparked various speculations, ranging from perspective tricks to more mystical explanations. But how could someone appear to defy gravity in a simple photograph? Bruce Lee didn't need to respect gravity. Gravity respected Bruce Lee. The answer may lie in his grip strength. His grip was so powerful that reports claim he could crush apples with his bare hands. If he was holding onto the wall with his fingers, even imperceptibly, that could have been enough to support his body in the air for a brief moment. However, the absence of a visible hand position in the image continues to intrigue those who analyze the scene. Whether it was an optical illusion or a real physical feat, this image remains one of the greatest enigmas he left behind. What really happened at that moment? What is certain is that his strength and body control were so extraordinary that even a simple photo still raises questions to this day. His punches were impressive, but his kicks took destructive power to another level. A single strike could send opponents flying several meters away, something that seemed exaggerated until witnessed in person. How did he manage to transfer so much power into a kick without losing speed or balance? The biomechanics of his movements were nearly perfect. His torso rotated at the exact moment, his hip amplified the impact, and his leg extended with surgical precision. Unlike conventional kicks, which often rely solely on thigh strength, he used his entire body to generate a wave of impact that carried through to the target. The result was a strike that not only knocked down the opponent, but hurled them backward with immense force. Reports suggest that his kick had power comparable to that of a heavyweight fighter's blow. If the one-inch punch was already a mystery, what could be said about kicks that defied the laws of physics? Speed and precision were always defining traits of his demonstrations. One of his most impressive tricks involved placing a coin in someone's hand, and before the person could close their fingers, he had already swapped the coin for another without them noticing. The speed with which he performed this feat made it seem as if the coin had simply vanished. How was it possible to move so fast that he could deceive natural reflexes? This type of action required more than just speed. The human reaction time is extremely difficult to surpass, and in this trick, he had to calculate not only the movement of the other person's hand, but also the exact trajectory to swap the objects. The margin for error was minimal, and any hesitation would have made the trick impossible. Although this demonstration seemed like a simple skill game, it was clear evidence of his ability to act within fractions of a second. If he could manipulate such a small object imperceptibly, imagine how that speed applied in a real fight. Among the many performances that shocked audiences, one of the most remarkable took place at a tournament in 1967. During a demonstration, a renowned martial artist was challenged to block his strikes. Even knowing exactly what was going to happen, the opponent could not react. Within seconds, a flurry of attacks was delivered before any defense could be raised. How could someone move so fast that even an experienced master was left defenseless? The answer lay in the perfect combination of explosive muscle power, neuromotor control, and minimal reaction time. The human body has a limit to its response speed, and his attacking ability surpassed that limit in an almost superhuman way. His strikes came from unpredictable angles, and before the opponent's mind could process the first movement, the next ones were already in motion. This demonstration became one of the most iconic of his career. Even today, few come close to that level of speed. The question remains, how far can the human body be trained to react before an opponent even perceives the attack? Throughout his life, he faced many challenges, but few were as iconic as his confrontation with Wong Jackman in 1964. The fight took place in a closed environment away from cameras, and accounts of what really happened vary. Some say it lasted only a few minutes, while others claim it was a longer battle. What is known is that this fight completely changed his perspective on martial arts. But why? Before this fight, his approach was based on more traditional techniques. However, when facing an opponent who used a more defensive style, he realized that his efficiency needed improvement. The fight was not as quick as he had expected, leading him to rethink his philosophy, striving for greater fluidity in movements and eliminating any technique that was not entirely effective. This moment became the catalyst for the creation of Jeet Kune Do, his revolutionary combat system. Regardless of the different versions of the fight that circulate, its impact on his evolution is undeniable. What started as a simple challenge ended up redefining his entire approach, proving that even a master can always find ways to evolve. Many stories surround his journey, and one of the most recurring involves the spontaneous challenges he received. During his filming and training, it was not uncommon for someone to try to test him in a real fight. On all these occasions, he responded with frightening precision and speed, ending the confrontations before his opponents even understood what had happened. But what made him so difficult to defeat? Imagine being a guy who couldn't just take a walk in peace. Wherever he went, someone wanted to test if he was really that good. Spoiler, he was. His fighting style did not follow fixed patterns. While most martial artists train choreographed sequences, he adapted his movements instantly, responding according to the situation. This approach made him unpredictable, and his opponents never knew what to expect. Additionally, his speed made it nearly impossible for any attack attempt to succeed. The few who had the opportunity to face him confirmed that fighting against him was like trying to hit a shadow. Before a strike could even be completed, he had already moved to another angle and countered with something even more precise. This proves that his skill went beyond technique. It was an instinct refined to the extreme. To reach such an impressive level of skill, he followed a training regimen that exceeded any common standard. His routine included thousands of punches and kicks daily, along with exercises that demanded extreme body control. But it wasn't just the intensity that stood out, it was the way he integrated everything into his life. Every moment seemed like an opportunity for improvement. While watching television, he performed isometric exercises. During conversations, he trained his breathing and muscle contraction. Even simple activities were used to develop specific skills. This obsession with constant improvement turned him into a true prodigy, someone whose body and mind operated in total synchronization. This level of discipline explains how he achieved feats that still defy explanation today. While most people are content with regular training, he saw training as an inseparable part of his existence. Perhaps this is the greatest lesson he left behind. The true limit is not in the body, but in the dedication to surpass it. Among the numerous strength-building exercises he practiced, one of the most impressive was the dragon flag. This movement required an absurd level of core strength and body control. To perform it, one had to support themselves only by the shoulders on a bench or fixed bar, keeping the body completely straight while raising and lowering it in a controlled manner. The effort to maintain this position is so intense that even elite athletes struggle to execute it. But why did this exercise become a symbol of his strength? The biomechanics of the dragon flag require that the abdominal muscles support the entire body weight without the spine touching the bench. Additionally, the descent must be controlled, preventing gravity from taking over. Any mistake could overload the lower back muscles and compromise execution. However, he not only mastered this technique, but performed multiple repetitions with ease. The impact of this exercise was so significant that it is now widely practiced by fighters and athletes from various disciplines. Many try to replicate it, but few can execute it with the same perfection. If basic exercises already demand discipline and preparation, what can be said about one that challenges even the most experienced? A fighter is supposed to be fast, but his speed exceeded any normal limit. In an impressive demonstration, he proved that he could catch an opponent's fist in midair before the punch was fully executed. Imagine the scenario: an attack coming at full speed, and before the strike could land, his hand was already gripping the opponent's wrist, stopping the movement halfway through. How could someone have reflexes that fast? This feat was not just about speed, but about an unbelievable level of anticipation. He could perceive an opponent's movements even before they were completed. This happened because he trained not just his reaction time, but also his ability to read body language. Small signals, such as tension in the shoulders or a shift in the opponent's balance, already indicated what was coming next. So, by the time the punch was thrown, he was already prepared to act. Many try to develop this skill, but few come close to this level of precision. While most people take fractions of a second to react to an attack, he seemed to predict movements before they even happened. This technique, more than any other, demonstrated that his perception was beyond what is considered normal. How was it possible for someone to react before the action was completed? Most fighters train with punching bags weighing between 40 and 60 kilograms, 90 to 130 pounds, enough to absorb impacts without losing mobility. However, his punches and kicks were so powerful that traditional equipment couldn't withstand his force. Because of this, he used a special heavy bag weighing approximately 135 kilograms, 300 pounds. For many, this weight would already make it difficult to move the equipment, but he not only made it swing effortlessly, he even managed to send it airborne with a single kick. How could someone generate so much power in one strike? While most people trained with normal punching bags, Bruce Lee was basically kicking a suspended refrigerator and making it look easy. The explanation may lie in how he used his entire body to generate force in his strikes. Unlike those who rely solely on arm or leg strength, he applied a chain reaction movement, where every muscle worked together to maximize power. The result was a devastating impact, capable of moving an object that would normally require multiple people to shift. If a regular punching bag already absorbs a large portion of the impact, imagine the force needed to make a 135 kilograms, 300 pounds bag move with a simple kick. This feat not only proved his physical capability, but also raised questions about the true limits of human strength. How far can the body be trained to reach this level of power? The feats presented throughout his journey show that his abilities went far beyond what was considered normal. Every movement was the result of intense training, absolute dedication, and a deep understanding of his own body. Even so, many of his demonstrations continue to be studied and debated, challenging experts and raising questions about the true limits of human capacity. How did someone manage to reach such an absurd level of precision, strength, and speed? Regardless of scientific explanations, his legacy remains unparalleled. He not only redefined martial arts, but also inspired generations to push beyond their own limits. If you enjoyed this journey of discoveries, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment below on what caught your attention the most. Maybe others will relate, and we can create an interesting discussion. And of course, subscribe for more content where curiosity knows no limits.